In the office hours on Friday, we reviewed the spinal cord briefly, and I tried to stress how the terms ipsilateral and contralateral are used to describe lesions and the clinical deficits they produce. I used the spinothalamic tract as an example, and that sparked some follow-up questions that I'm not sure I properly addressed, so in this short video we'll use a digital model to better explain that pathway. Here's a cross-section of the spinal cord at the cervical level. The gray matter is the butterfly-shaped region in the center. And the white matter are all the axons that are running up and down in the tracts located at the perimeter of the spinal cord. We first show the spinothalamic pathway at one level on the patient's left side. Now, this half sphere represents a dorsal root ganglion, and within it I have modeled a single neuron, which is colored in yellow. I've got the cell body here, and I've got its fiber extending out to the periphery and centrally to the spinal cord. Keep in mind that there are many neurons within a single DRG, and also that I have modeled this neuron at a much larger size than is true to life, to be able to see it for this demo. Spinothalamic pathway carries information from the periphery regarding pain, coarse touch, and temperature. So the fiber from this neuron out in the periphery exists as a free nerve ending for detecting one of those stimuli. And in this demo, I'll continue to use pain information as an example, just for the sake of simplicity. Remember that this pathway includes neurons that will be handling those other modalities as well. So the fiber extends from the free nerve ending in the periphery into the spinal cord, where it will ascend or descend one or two segments in the dorsolateral tract of Lissauer. And then it will leave that tract and synapse on a second order neuron that I have here colored in red. That second order neuron will immediately decussate. So you can follow this fiber as it crosses the midline, and it will enter into the white matter zone of the spinal cord, and at this position it will turn and it will ascend to reach the thalamus on the contralateral side of the body. Let's talk about how we use the terms ipsilateral and contralateral clinically in the context of lesions. So if I introduce a lesion here, represented by this box, this lesion is intersecting the first order neuron. And I positioned it where the dorsal rootlets are entering the spinal cord, but I could have put this box over the DRG or over the peripheral nerve out in the body, and the results would be the same. The lesion is representing some kind of trauma or stroke or a tumor compressing some of this structure, basically just representing some kind of damage to the system. And since there has been no crossing of the fibers across the midline, this lesion here is going to produce deficits that are on the ipsilateral side of the body. So the flow of information is coming from the left half of the body, entering the spinal cord, and we're lesioning it here and interrupting that flow of information. Now, if we model a lesion within the spinal cord itself, it becomes very apparent that it greatly matters where precisely the lesion is, because that dictates which items have been damaged and where they have been damaged. So for example, this lesion now is intersecting the second order neuron in its axon. But because the damage is in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord, the deficits are the same. It's a loss of sensation from the ipsilateral side of the body because the fibers have not crossed yet. In order to damage the spinothalamic pathway and produce a deficit where the loss of sensation is on the contralateral side of the body, you have to damage this pathway after the fibers have crossed. So for example, damaging the ventral half of the right spinal cord will damage these fibers after they have crossed, and that would produce a deficit on the left or contralateral side of the body relative to the site of the damage. Keep in mind that these pathways exist on both sides of the body, so if I add in the complementary DRG for this spinal cord level, right, so our right DRG on the other side, You can see that the pathway is a mirror image. I've just changed the colors so that we've got an orange neuron in this right DRG, and its fiber is synapsing on this green neuron in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord on the right side. So where that lesion happens to be is very important as far as which one of these spinothalamic pathways gets damaged. Finally, we also need to remember that at any given level of the spinal cord, the contents of the ascending pathways include not just the fibers entering at that level, but also all the fibers that entered at lower levels. Here, I have modeled another DRG from a lower level, and I've only modeled one for simplicity, but they will continue down as far as the spinal cord goes. And if we look from below, we see the same elements of the pathway, the same steps. So the first order neuron synapses on a second order neuron. We're just at a lower spinal cord level. And that neuron sends its fiber to decussate across, which will then ascend within the tract. So you can see that the fiber from the lower level has joined the fiber from the higher level, and they're all running together in that anterolateral or spinothalamic pathway. So a lesion in the ventral spinal cord in the location of the anterolateral system will not only damage the fibers entering at that particular level, but also all the fibers that have already crossed at lower levels and are ascending in that location. And that will produce a deficit in pain sensation from that level all the way down in the body. We can represent that lesion by this box here. So everything that is ascended from below is interfered with. A lesion to an entire half of the spinal cord will produce the same deficit that we just described, loss of sensation from the contralateral side of the body at the level of the transection, the spinal cord getting cut here, as well as all of the rest of the contralateral side of the body whose fibers have already crossed and joined in. But because this transection is now also including that dorsal part of the spinal cord, you will also get a loss of sensation ipsilateral to the lesion, but only at the level of the transection, because all the rest of the DRGs on that side have already crossed their fibers and they're running in the intact contralateral spinal cord relative to the lesion.